Japan? D&D's Japan. Japan? D&D's Japan. Hey everyone, CJ here. Welcome to the second episode of Reimagining Kara-Tur, a series where I combine my love of history with D&D to create a fresh take on Kara-Tur. Kara-Tur is D&D's version of Asia, but some parts of it looks kind of funky, because if we just look at the map here, it is quite apparent that the original designers wanted to make a place that looked different, but not so different that we don't recognize it as Asia. But then what we ended up with is these two weirdly shaped floating bananas that make up D&D's version of Japan, Wa and Kozakura. If you compare the map of our world, Kozakura is obviously made up of Japan's main island of Honshu, plus the surrounding Shikoku, Hokkaido islands, and a few other new islands. Wa is made up of the southwestern Kyushu island and the small Ryukyu island group. What makes me laugh though is how they extended Kyushu up to add more land to Wa. I kinda understand why, but that extension up just looks very funny to me. Now, why would the designers separate Japan into two, you ask? Well, it's pretty easy to guess why, cause it is the same deal as Shoulong and Toulon. They want to have their cake and eat it. They want to have the Sengoku period, the most exciting part of Japanese history, on one side, represented by Kozakura, and the relatively peaceful Imperial Japan period on the other side, represented by Wa. Despite the ridiculous extension to Wa, the political division is actually quite historically accurate. The first Japanese kingdom recorded in history, Yamatai or Yamato, was actually situated in the southwestern part of Japan, Kyushu and part of Honshu. And the name Wa is actually the real traditional name for Japanese people and their civilization. If you see something that says Wafu, not waifu, like the wafu sauce here, it really just means Japanese style sauce. And Wafu Ryokan is a Japanese style inn. But let's put Wa aside for now. I'm going to cover it in the next episode. This time I'm going to just concentrate on Kozakura. The Sengoku period literally means the Warring States period. It lasted about 150 years, between 1467 to 1615, which is just a small slice of Japan's 2000 years of written history. But it feels like 90% of all media ever produced on ancient Japan is based on this period. Dramas, animes, games, and even the Rokugan and Kamigawa settings are partly based on this. Even the chick flicks, for goodness sake. There are also girls who are way into the guise of this time period. All in quite unhealthy ways. But hey, that's none of my business. So don't ask why I know stuff about the chick flicks either. I can understand why people like this time period though, because it is the peak of samurai legends and the golden age of ninja mythology. Since every daimyo are in the business of fighting wars, they need warriors and spies. With Kozakura, you get the classic samurai and ninja experience. But we've got tons of those already, so I'm going to come up with something different. Now, how would I reimagine this? First of all, I understand where the original designers were going. They wanted to keep the war and drama in Kozakura and the folklore and folktales in Wa. So let's keep that convention. As always, I'm going to use inspiration from real-world history and legends. But for Kozakura, I will be using mainly history. What's often missing in the Sengoku-inspired setting is firearm. I get it, firearm in a samurai setting feels as sacrilegious as burgers in a sushi shop. But firearm was an important part of the Sengoku era. Oda Nobunaga's success can be partly attributed to his early adoption of the firearm squad. He bought guns from the Portuguese and reverse engineered it into Tanegashima. At first, it wasn't as efficient as bows and arrows, but eventually they improved on it, and by the time they launched the Korean invasion in 1592, They had more guns than any European nations. But your plain old muskets is boring. I think we can make it more interesting if we mix it up a bit and add other types of gunpowder weaponry. Japan also had some hand cannons. If you have seen Studio Ghibli's Princess Mononoke, it is the staff-mounted portable cannon used by the grunts. Japan had most likely bought some of those from Song Dynasty China, or perhaps they were brought in by the Mongols when they invaded Japan in 1274. So let's just expand that with other weird and wonderful ancient arsenals from China. If you want to see some really interesting designs, just Google Huolongjing. In game terms, maybe they can be really powerful, but have proportionally long loading time, making it a per encounter sort of deal, just to mix up the encounter dynamics. Next up, religion and conquest. At that time, the Portuguese were trading with Japan, and their missionaries were preaching Catholicism. I know some of you who knows where I'm going might be thinking, oh no, is CJ going to get edgy? Well, yes I am. For history. A long time ago, there was a mass persecution of Japanese Christians. The ruling class were suspicious of the Portuguese Jesuits because Spain was also spreading Catholicism, and at the time, they were conquering South America and the Philippines. Initially, the Portuguese Jesuits had convinced Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the de facto ruler of Japan, that they were not the same as the Spanish. But some dumb Spanish captain called Matias de Landejo freely admitted to Hideyoshi that their modus operandi before conquering a new land is to convert the people first and then get them to join the invasion. And also, both Portugal and Spain at the time had the same king. It doesn't help that William Adams, the first Western samurai and the inspiration for the main character of Neo and the old TV show Shogun, was an English Protestant. And he was fanning the flames against the Catholics. Unsurprisingly, most of the Spanish and Portuguese were kicked out and Japan was closed off. So the real victims here were the poor new Japanese converts who were caught between the power struggle and were forced to renounce Christianity by often brutal means. Compounding the matter, on a separate incident, the Japanese Christians and Ronins started the Shimabara Rebellion in 1637. They were rebelling against a corrupt, tyrannical daimyo, and the Dutch were helping them. The shogun at the time didn't really know what was happening, but saw them as a threat, so they were brutally crushed and it further exacerbated their persecution. Legend says that the leader of the rebellion, Amakusa Shiro, had magical powers. That's why he was featured as the last boss of SNK's Samurai Showdown game. I know this is a terrible tragedy, but this is also a good justification to create a dex-based Ronin Paladin subclass. Anyway, I may talk about this in my other channel in the future, so you should subscribe if history is your thing. Okay, using these new elements and the existing element, I think we can create something new. Since they have added new islands to Kozakura, I think a horse-riding Sengoku setting doesn't make as much sense. So let's go with a water-based pirate setting. The Japanese pirates, Wako, were actually really powerful and terrorized the Pacific all the way up to the 16th century. It was also an international operation with multinational crew from Korea and even China. So maybe you and your ragtag group can start from one of the islands. Each island has its own local warrior culture. There is a ninja island, an island where all the unwanted Ronins were sent to, Monk Island, where they can't use bladed weapons but they have recently adapted to gunpowder weaponry, Geriatric Samurai Island, Shugenja Island, Faerunian Travelers Island, and as many new islands as you want. For as long as you know, the shogunate had ruled the islands with an iron fist, and their rule goes unchallenged because the imperial family is in their custody, and their elites partake in specially prepared tea that gives them supernatural powers. The samurai during the Sengoku period were really into tea ceremonies, by the way. Previously, the reigning empress was able to slip out of the castle and organize a revolution. but since they threatened to kill her parents, she had no choice but to surrender herself. And before she did, she left the blueprint of her revolution and her imperial seal in the possession of the players. So with this, the players can go island hopping and deal with the respective MacGuffins to gain the fealty of each island, to eventually launch a rebellion. The ninjas can steal the magical tea powder, the geriatric samurais knows the secret passage into the castle, the Ronin paladins can fight the undead army, and so on. So there is a heist element to it. Finally, the players can choose to launch an attack against the shogunate to bring it down and restore the imperial family, or just seize power for themselves. Betrayal is always a feature in heist operations anyway. So what do you think of the samurai pirate heist setting? I know it is unconventional, but it is all based on history. Comment below and tell me what you think. Is it dumb or is it cool? Anyway, subscribe and I will see you on the next episode. CJ, over and out.